We've seen outrage across the country because police officers aren't facing charges in the deaths of Eric Garner and Michael Brown. But these aren't isolated incidents. Over and over again, prosecutors fail to indict police officers after fatal encounters with civilians. In a new report, the New York Daily News found 179 fatalities involving on-duty NYPD officers since 1999. Just 3 of those cases led to indictments, and only 1 resulted in a conviction. 1 conviction out of 179 deaths. And it's not just in New York. The Houston Chronicle reported similar numbers in an investigation last year. The paper found 81 police shootings by Dallas police officers from 2008 to 2012. Just 1 officer was indicted. And grand juries cleared Houston police officers after shootings 288 times in a row. There's a pattern. When police officers is involved in a shooting, local prosecutors just don't indict them. Prosecutors and police work together every day. They're essentially co-workers. The whole process is a giant conflict of interest, and it needs to change. It's why the family of Tamir Rice, the 12-year-old shot and killed by an officer in Cleveland, is pushing hard for an indictment. It's why we saw huge protests over the weekend. People know the system isn't right. And moments ago, President Obama said those protests remind us of the work we need to do.
A country's conscience sometimes has to be triggered by some inconvenience, because I think a lot of people who saw the Eric Garner video are troubled, even if they haven't had that same experience themselves, even if they're not African American or Latino. I think there are a lot of good, well-meaning people. I think there are probably a lot of police officers who might have looked at that and said, that is a tragedy, what happened, and we've got to figure out how to bring an end to these kinds of tragedies. Then attention spans move on, right? There's the next thing. There's some international crisis. There's something that happens here. And change doesn't really occur. And the value of peaceful protests, activism, organizing, it reminds the society this is not yet done.
America is not done yet. We have more work to do. And that commitment to justice is how we'll address an issue that more and more Americans realize is a national crisis. Joining me now, Mark Claxton, former New York police officer and director of the Black Law Enforcement Alliance, and former prosecutor and host of Judge Faith Jenkins. Thank you both for being here.
Sure, thanks, Raf.
Thank you.
Mark, you're a former NYPD officer. Is there an inherent conflict of interest to have prosecutors handling police shooting cases?
Absolutely, without a doubt. I mean, some people consider the relationship between the prosecutors and the police to be somewhat symbiotic. I happen to personally believe, and I think the evidence will bear out, that it's more incestuous than symbiotic. And when you can't continue this incestuous system and behavior and expect a different result, we will continue to get the same result from prosecutors' offices around the nation if we don't change the very structure of the system itself, the format of policing, and change the dynamic of the relationship between policing and prosecutors, and even change the investigative track that prosecutors have to rely on. We have to remember, oftentimes, before it even hits the prosecutor's hands, that case has been investigated on some level, evidence collected, witnesses interviewed, etc. So we have to examine that, because that's also done by police.
That's correct, because the foot soldiers of all of that, Faith, are the police themselves. And you're talking about a policeman, and the prosecutor is presented with that.
Right.
And the bar is so high on the federal level that the jurisdictional threshold is so high that it usually is in state prosecutors. Should a special prosecutor handle shootings and allegations of misconduct?
Yes. I mean, based on the number of cases we've seen recently and everything across the country, I think that now you're looking at, we have a system in place. Anytime you have a system in place that doesn't have an adequate check on the power or an adequate check on accountability of the system, then you're creating an atmosphere that's ripe for abuse. Right? We have government inspectors for restaurants, for food. It's not because we don't like restaurants, it's because we want to check on for the public safety and public health.
And an objective check.
An objective check. We have healthcare inspectors, not because we don't like doctors, but because we want to have an adequate check on the services being provided to people. This is about making policing better. And anytime.
But you don't have doctors in business with the doctors doing the checking. You don't have restaurant people that are in business with the restaurant doing the checking.
Right.
The fear here for many of us for years is police and prosecutors are in business together
They are
every
policing,
day.
and so because we don't have that in other government agencies, but yet we are expecting police and prosecutors to police themselves. That's just one of the reforms that has to change. Today, the New York Attorney General, it came out today, the New York Attorney General is asking the governor to give him the authority, his office the authority to review all police deaths, all deaths of civilians at the hand of police officers. That is going to be another check now. Not just local police investigating themselves, but now the Attorney General is asking to step in and make their own investigation.
And that's where it goes, Mark, now, because we have finally seen a significant number of Americans saying we need change, but now change to what? And the New York State Attorney General coming out, the big march this weekend, raising that. A new NBC poll found there's broad agreement to require police officers to wear video records. 76% of Americans think it's a good idea. But when people were asked if different standards are applied to white and blacks by law enforcement, there was a big racial divide. 82% of African Americans agreed, while only 39% of whites agreed. How do we bridge that divide, Mark?
Well, people still remain unwilling and really defensive about even discussing race, the realities of race, the perceptions of race, and having honest and open dialogue and, if necessary, discourse. Until people can get to that point about the willingness to discuss race, you'll always see that type of skewed figures. I think it's also important in long-standing aspect. The president's announced task force is going to be significant, has the potential to be significant because of its input in revolutionizing the way in law enforcement conducts business across this nation. I think there's a potential there for some great things coming out of the task force and shifting the paradigm away from heavy-handed, aggressive, militarized police and prosecutors' offices that operate sometimes in subjective manner.
You know, Faith, today the Justice Department expanded its rules against profiling in law enforcement, and President Obama described a meeting with young activists who'd experienced profiling. Listen to this, Judge Faith.
When they described their own personal experiences of having been stopped for no reason or having generated suspicion because they were in a community that supposedly they didn't belong. My mind went back to what it was like for me when I was 17, 18, 20. As I told them, not only do I hear the pain and frustration of being subjected to that kind of constant suspicion, part of the reason I got into politics was to figure out how can I bridge some of those gaps in understanding so that the larger country understands this is not just a black problem or a brown problem, this is an American problem.
How do we fix this problem? How do we approach fixing it, Judge Faith?
Well, one of the other reforms that we need in terms of training police officers, a lot of these issues, it's not conscious racism that's the problem. It's people who are oblivious to their own implicit biases and prejudices. Look at how Officer Darren Wilson described Mike Brown as almost a demon who could run through bullets. Look at how the way Eric Garner was treated on the street, not as a father, a husband, a son, but of someone someone who was so dangerous that he was wanted dead or alive on that street that day in that police encounter. So we have to train our officers, because people have racially charged images in their minds, and we have to train our officers to identify what those images are and deal with them, so that when they police communities in the people in the African American community, they will do so knowing if they have implicit biases and prejudices and can address them.
I agree with all the sensitivity, but I also think that policemen need to understand there will be a penalty if you break the law.
Absolutely.
And until we do that, I don't think they even have the need to question it if you look at this data and they can just walk away.
I agree with you.
With
Until
no
someone goes to
prosecutions
jail,
under any circumstance.
until someone is put in handcuffs, we are not going to see the kind of change.
And that most police are not guilty of anything, but those that are, we've got to have a system that can hold them accountable. Mark Claxton and Faith
Absolutely.
Jenkins, thank you both for your time tonight. Coming
you, Ed.
up, breaking news about the new report on torture during the Bush War on Terror. Thousands of U.S. Marines on alert tonight, ready for potential threats. Plus, the untold story of the Obama presidency. What Republicans don't want the American people to know. And where do you get Taylor Swift and Vladimir Putin in the same category? Here's a hint. It's definitely not the Grammys. And live from New York, it's Politics Nation. Conversation Nation is ahead.